So let us discuss about in the newspaper. It is 3rd April 2015. Understand this. These daily classes are meant you to understand the Hindu paper or simplify the Hindu paper for you. That is one thing. And the objective is to reduce the time you spend on reading the Hindu newspaper and exactly how you need to carry these articles into your examination. So these are the things which we need to understand. This is what is the objective. The first thing is, this is related to a study conducted by Janagraha. So this Janagraha is an NGO in Bangalore. According to that, the urban finances, there is a huge gap on the requirements of the finances in the major urban cities in India and the available finances to them. Among the available finances, the finances raised by the urban bodies themselves are very less. It means that for their finances, they have to depend upon the state government or central government. For instance, the major source of the finances for the urban bodies is from the property tax. In cities such as Mumbai, the octroi is the major source of the revenue. So the octroi, the entry of goods into a particular city, it will artificially increases the price of the goods. So the Second Administrative Reforms Commission has clearly said that the octroi has to be abolished. And the second thing is, the property tax reforms which are initiated in many of the urban bodies, they are not being properly implemented. So try to understand what are the property tax reforms which are undertaken. And the second thing is, the properties, especially the municipal properties, they are very underpriced. The rentals which are collected from them are very minimal. And also the income from the advertisements which has a huge potential in the cities such as New York, etc. They are not been properly taken, are not been properly garnered by this particular urban bodies in India. So we need to work out on this and to improve the urban finances situation. Unless urbanization is planned with proportionate urban finances, urbanization will not be meaningful and proper in this particular country. Now let's go to the next article. The next article, it is related to the financial stability. So this article, you can relate it to the banking sector. And the second thing is, this article is important with regard to the state versus market debate, etc. The article majorly talks about, the Raghuram Rajan speech says this, the Indian banks are already overly exposed to the financial risks, especially with regard to the infrastructure financing. So in these circumstances, we have to bring in new infrastructure bonds or else new sources of the capital. So we are not supposed to overexploit the existing sources of capital from the banking sector. And he says an innovation is necessary and also to absorb the risks, the deepening of the markets or spreading of the markets, development of new market instruments are necessary in the country. So in the process he quotes two new initiatives which are very successful in the country. The first one is, previously India used to get the debt only in the foreign currency. Now RBI has able to bring in a liquid rupee government bond market. It is rupee government bond market. So where government was able to issue 40 years bonds, that is long-term bonds. And the second thing is, the new technology which is emerging in the banking sector, it is making the operational costs of the banks coming down. And the third thing is, so recently, this particular interest rate futures contract, it also proven to be successful in India. So what is the essence of the article is, so we have to deepen the markets and we have to use the innovative mechanisms to expand the markets so that the capital, different sources of the capital can be brought in instead of exposing the banks for greater risk. On the other hand, let us talk about the Modi, what the Modi tells to the banks. The Modi talks about banks are the major sources of financial inclusion in the country. So the banking sector has to serve the poor and underprivileged. So it means that the farmers, marginalized, all these shall be the beneficiaries of the banking sector. We already know the part of the financial inclusion. And the next article is, so recently the government announced a memorial for former Prime Minister PV Narasimha Rao. Now, this is an article which is very close to me. I always believed that the PV underrated Prime Minister of India. So, in these circumstances, let us understand that what Sanjay Baru is here to say about this. What the Sanjay Baru says is the post-Nehruvian economic architecture of the country after Nehru, and the second thing is post-Cold War era foreign policy architecture. These are greatly influenced by the PV Narasimha Rao. Now the PV Narasimha Rao, in the post-Nehruvian economic framework, in 1991, as a Prime Minister and also as an Industries Minister, he brought in the industrial policy that has kept an end to the license Raj or quota Raj in the country. And the second thing is, the economic policy of PV Narasimha Rao is called as a third path or middle path, where he tried to bring in the welfareism on one side and liberalism on the other side. The liberalism has to bring in the growth of the economy, and welfareism has to distribute this growth for the benefits of the people. It means this growth has to create the employment. So then the fruits of the growth can reach to everyone. And this is what we are talking about, inclusive growth nowadays. On the other hand, on the foreign policy front, the Look East policy, that is of Mr. PV Narasimha Rao, it has renewed our ties with Japan. We know how the Indo-Japan ties now are moving. And next with South Korea. And also with Singapore. And next is, India established its first diplomatic relations with Israel during the PV Narasimha Rao era. So it means there is a lot for the PV Narasimha Rao, Prime Minister PV Narasimha Rao, what he did for this country, which is largely ignored by his own party. And personally, I admire him as a best Prime Minister of this country. And the next article is about the Gujarat Control of Terrorism and Organized Crime Act, which is recently passed by the Gujarat legislature. So according to this law, the first thing is, any confession made by a convicted person before the police can be admitted as an evidence in a court of law. And the second thing is, previously 90 days are provided under the normal law to the accused. The custody of 90 days was given. Now this custody under this law is increased to 180 days. Now, always the terrorism versus or terror laws versus human rights is always a big argument in India. So what this argument is, one way, most of the terror laws in India are coming in reaction to or knee-jerk reaction to some events which have occurred. For example, if you talk about TADA, Terrorist and Disruptive Activities of India, Prevention Act of India. So it was in reaction to the Punjab crisis. And then after the Mumbai bomb blast, then we got MCOCA, Maharashtra Organized Crime Act. And next is, after this you have this POTA. So after the parliamentary attack you got the POTA. It means that when an event has occurred, immediately we are coming with anti-terror law as a solution. It means it's a very microscopic view of the problem. And the second thing is, law alone cannot bring about a change. And the right implementation of the law is very much necessary. Most of these laws end up as abusive laws. And they provide for huge discretion to the administrative authorities in most of the cases, which is misuse leading to the abuse of the human rights. In this context, if you observe the second ARC report, what it has said is the investigative mechanism of the country need to be improved. So it is not the tough terror laws. Improve the investigative machinery. That means create more forensic labs where we can provide more sophisticated techniques can be used to identify the criminals and their activities. Now the next article is related to the Sri Lanka restoring ties in India. So this is actually with Chandrika Kumar Tunga. So the former president of Sri Lanka, what she said is, Now she was the president or head of the Presidential Special Task Force on Reconciliation. What she says is the environment of bringing the Sinhalese and Tamils closer to each other. It is for finding a new pace in the country. And the second thing is this. The second thing is India's Prime Minister's visit also has provided for an environment for renewing of the ties between India and Sri Lanka. These are the two major points which are stressed by Kumaratunga. And on the other hand, India and with regard to the Iran nuclear program, a framework agreement was brought in or based on which a comprehensive agreement will be worked out at a later date. So I will deal this Iran's framework agreement and obviously we have to see how the Jewish Israel will respond to this particular nuclear agreement. So, I mean, this has to be dealt in detail, so because it's a complex topic. And next is health of the data of patients to be centralized. So the government is bringing in National E-Health Authority. So now if you see, in United States everywhere, electronic medical records is a major development. So because of this, the patient's data will be centralized. And wherever the patient go, he can carry just this particular data that will be more than sufficient. So because of this, unnecessary carrying of the records along with, it may not be necessary. And on the other hand, the major challenge here to protect the privacy of the patient. So India is also initiating such a national e-health authority with centralized databases, which is a positive step. Thank you.